We are learning more about the $20 million gold heist at Pearson Airport that happened a year ago today. Police have now arrested 6 suspects, and they're looking for 3 more.
Closing arguments are underway in the trial of Umar Zamir, the man accused of first-degree murder in the 2021 death of Toronto police officer Jeffrey Northrup.
And you're going to want to fill up your gas tank today. Trust us on this. The price of the pumps is set to jump 14 cents overnight. We'll tell you why.
Good afternoon and welcome to CP24 Live at Noon. I'm Bakari Savage.
And I'm Lena Latafat. Thanks so much for being here. Police have made several arrests in the gold bar heist at Pearson Airport a year ago, and we're now learning it was allegedly an inside job.
Yeah, CP24's Courtney Hills has those details. Courtney, you were there for the announcement this morning.
I was, and there were a lot of questions surrounding how something like this could be pulled off over at Pearson Airport, and investigators were able to share some information. You mentioned this was a year ago today. What we saw today, some video from inside of the cargo facility where the theft took place. We'll share that video with you now. According to police, they say somebody had a truck arrived at the cargo facility with some falsified paperwork. This was paperwork used in a previous transaction. It was printed off within Air Canada. They say there were 2 people involved in all of this, 2 employees with Air Canada, a former employee and a current one, and that helped them get access to the area, get access to the gold. The gold worth $20 million. They also say there was $2.5 million in foreign currency. They loaded up that truck and they took off. Well, police announced today 9 suspects in connection with this theft. They say 6 of them already arrested, 3 warrants out for 3 other individuals, 1 who is currently in custody in Florida. Here's more from police.
The way that I would characterize it is being very organized and taking advantage of opportunities that were afforded by people by virtue of their employment. I certainly wouldn't say very easy because this investigation has been an incredibly comprehensive investigation with tremendous amount of resources devoted to it in order to identify the people responsible. But certainly the positions of the people that were involved in it made it easier.
And part of what led police to some of the arrests and really the break in this investigation, the arrest of somebody in Pennsylvania, somebody who was found with 65 illegal guns on them and gold believed to be connected to this heist from 1 year ago. I mentioned that person currently in custody south of the border. That person has a warrant out for their arrest. As for the total amount here, guys, police saying this is the largest gold heist in Canadian history, $20 million worth. So far, though, they've only recovered about $90,000 worth. They say there is a challenge here because they believe the gold has already been melted down, maybe distributed. It could already be overseas. And because when it's melted down, there's no serial number, it's harder to determine where that gold is now. So they say this isn't over. They are still investigating, still trying to follow up on leads to find out where it is. Over to you.
All right. What a story. And coming up a little later on CP24 Live at Noon, we're going to be sitting down with CTV's crime expert, Mark Mendelson, to unpack this some more. That was Courtney Hills reporting live. Well, an OPP-led investigation has led to the seizure of 20 illegal firearms and 73 kilograms of drugs, mostly cocaine.
Yeah, 35-year-old Bradley Nelson of Whitby is facing a total of 68 charges, including those related to illegal firearms and drug trafficking. During the search warrants, police also seized 3,000 rounds of ammunition and 3 bulletproof vests.
Closing arguments have begun in the Umar Zamir trial today. And
CP24's Beatrice Baseman has been inside the courtroom all morning and joins us now with the latest. Beatrice.
Bakari, we're just coming back from the morning recess and the defense is resuming its opening arguments. This is the last opportunity for Umar Zamir's lawyer, Nader Hassan, to address the jury. After that, it'll be up to the Crown to make its closing arguments, and then the judge will start instructing the jury before they get sequestered and begin deliberations. This morning, Nader Hassan started his appeal to the jury, saying that this was a tragic accident, not a criminal act, and that what happened happened back on July 2nd, 2021, was Jeffrey Northrup being killed under the weight of Mr. Zamir's car, and it was a tragedy, not a criminal act. He's asking the jury to consider all of the evidence that has been presented to them throughout this trial, from testimony from 3 different plainclothes officers who were with Jeffrey Northrup the night he was killed, to various forensic and collision reconstruction officers who also testified, Bakari, and provided their evidence, to Umar Zamir and his wife, Ida Sheikh, testifying on the stand as well. Both of them saying they were scared that these officers who were dressed in plain clothes did not look like police officers, that they did not act like police officers. And Nader Hassan also accusing all 3 of these plainclothes officers who took the stand of lying, of colluding in their story, in colluding when they were putting their notes together back at 52 Division, and in colluding in making up their lies, as he called them. The reason being is that all 3 officers testified that Detective Constable Jeffrey Northrup was standing in the laneway, arms out in front of him in the underground parking garage under Toronto City Hall that fateful night, and then was essentially hit head-on by Mr. Zamir in his vehicle, thrown over the hood of the car. And we now know, according to other reconstruction experts who testified, that did not happen. And it didn't happen according to the grainy video that was shown from the underground parking lot as well. So again, the defense now back delivering its closing arguments, and then it'll be the Crown's turn. And then after that, Justice Malloy will start instructing the jury by the end of the afternoon. Bakari and Lena.
Yeah, from jury selection to closing argument, CP24's Beatrice Vaisman. Thank you. Well, it's been a busy day at City Hall with a lot on the agenda for today's council meeting.
CP24's Phil Perkins joins us live now with the very latest. What's going on, Phil?
Well, Lena, Bakari, the number one thing people want to hear about is the vacant home tax rollout and some of these pretty aggressive pieces of mail that were sent to roughly 170,000 Toronto resident owners saying that they owe the city the vacant home tax fine, which for some people is anywhere between, $7,000 to some in the, the tens, the $30,000s of dollars, depending on the value of their home. They were looking to try to get some answers of what's going to be happening in this situation. Mayor LaVichelle did speak earlier today in front of reporters, but we do understand that it is not going to be talked about today in council chambers. They have pushed that to tomorrow. So in the meantime, what's happening here, instead of talking about the vacant home tax rollout and how much of a, as people have said throughout City Hall, was a disaster, right now they're talking about a student food program, which of course, very important, but they're moving this vacant home tax talk to tomorrow. LaVichelle did mention it today. Here's what she had to say for some of those people who got those letters and then rushed to their nearest civic center. Here's what she had to say.
This year, there are thousands of folks that received this bill for over $4,000 or $5,000 for the first installment. They are just shocked, and the program is a complete mess the way it was ruled out. I'm cleaning up the mess. So together with the senior staff and Budget Chief Shirley Carroll, we are exempting anyone that have received that form, that bill, that they do not have to pay.
So the people who don't have to pay, if you're watching this now, so roughly 170,000 Toronto home owners received that letter saying they owe thousands of dollars in this vacant home tax, despite the fact that they do live in their home. So part of those groups are people who did announce that they do indeed live in their home and still got the fine. City's trying to figure out how that happened. And then there's other people like yours truly who simply forgot. And I did not do it. And then I still got a letter saying that I owed thousands of dollars as well. But I will tell you right now, I did get to City Hall here. I went to the property tax cubicle. There's no lines like it was the first day. And they said that it's in the process, but I will not owe. So if you're in my boat, you do not owe any money or even the late fee for this. But there's about 2,000, roughly 2,000 vacant homes in the city that are truly vacant. They will still be on the hook for that vacant home tax. That's the purpose of this. But again, they're couching this to tomorrow, and then we'll see what they have to say about that. Back to you guys.
All right.
Okay, CP24's Phil Perkins. Well, the province is backing off its plan to make changes to the Up Express.
The Ford government intended to make every second train on the route nonstop between Union and Pearson Airport. That would mean residents at Weston and Bloor stations would only be able to access the line every 30 minutes. The province said the changes would be offset by increasing trains on the Kitchener GO line. However, thousands signed a petition calling for that decision to be reversed. Ontario's transportation minister says he's heard riders' concerns and has directed Metrolinx not to proceed. Minister of Transportation Prabmeet Sarkaria releasing this statement. While the intention was to provide a faster option for people traveling between Union and Pearson, I've heard riders' concerns about servicing Weston and Bloor stations along the Up Express line. I've directed Metrolinx to not proceed with these changes.
And the province's health minister is asking her federal counterpart to close a loophole that she says has led to a rise in clinics charging for access to primary care. In a letter to Mark Holland, Sylvia Jones is calling for non-physicians to be blocked from charging for publicly funded health services. The Federal Canada Health Act lays out which services are funded at the provincial level, but Jones says the act doesn't make clear what is or isn't allowed when it comes to services delivered by non-physicians, including nurse practitioners. The Ontario Public Service Employees Union is sounding the alarm about the potential lab closures in the province. Well, OPSEU says that the provincial government is considering shutting down 6 of 11 Public Health Ontario labs. The union says the facilities collect and process thousands of water samples and medical tests every day. It's warning that reducing the number of public health labs could compromise the integrity of test samples and put people at risk.
If the last few years have taught us anything, it is that public health should never be taken for granted. Like many choices made by this government, if Premier Ford decides to shutter the doors of these 6 labs, over half of the Public Health Ontario labs, it will be short-sighted and dangerous. He is creating a crisis where there is none.
When you're talking about closing publicly funded labs that provide testing of basic essentials, we just went through a pandemic. They were the ones who tested all the COVID samples. When you're talking about areas that rely on well water and people who are on fixed incomes or people who make minimum wage or people in precarious work, when they're not able to have easy access to free testing of their water, they make choices where they don't have it tested.
OPSEU is urging the province to invest in the labs and provide funding for public health infrastructure.
Well, coming up next on CP24 Live at noon, we're going to speak to CTV crime expert Mark Mendelson about the latest developments into the largest gold heist in Canadian history. It was 1 year ago today that $20 million in gold was stolen from Pearson Airport. We got a major update on the investigation from police. Peel Police have made 6 arrests and identified 3 other suspects. And for a closer look at this, we're joined live in studio now by CTV's crime expert, Mark Mendelson. Mark, thanks for sitting down with us. This could honestly be a Netflix series. And as Chief Duriappa put it this morning, it's a sensational story. Investigators now say this was an inside job. Let me start with your reaction.
You can't make this stuff up. I mean, if you were reading this in a book, you'd say, oh my God, it's too easy. But it really wasn't very easy. It's a difficult investigation. It starts with the heist. And we've all said from day one that there's got to be somebody with intimate knowledge of how the protocols are at the bonded warehouse. Mm-hmm. And there was probably an inside job, at least some assistance. And I think that's come to fruition now, where at least 2 employees of Air Canada. One of them, the supervisor of the warehouse, has been charged, and I believe there's a warrant out for him now. And then as you go further on down the line, you find out that the way bill that they used to retrieve the gold was actually meant for the day before to pick up seafood. And it was an expired one. So and the way bill was printed on an Air Canada printer. So all of these little clues, whether they're through investigations or through forensic investigations, electronic investigations, leads everybody to know that there's people involved in the inside. Then they got the video of this truck. And I think Peel did a tremendous job of following the security video, people's dash cams, their Ring doorbells. And they followed this vehicle for miles over the course of weeks and months that they were tracking this stuff down until they lost sight of it. But all of that is all really good gumshoe investigative work. And then, whenever you've got conspiracies, the last thing you want to do is have too many people involved. And what happens is the guy that was actually driving the truck gets stopped on an innocuous traffic stop in Pennsylvania, when nobody knew that he had 60 illegal guns in the car. And of course, when the police run him after he flees from that traffic stop, one thing leads to another. He's on the computer system. He's a person of interest with Peel. And then the ball starts to roll, and there's no stopping it. So lots of things came out of that press conference, more than I would normally expect on something that's going to be before the courts. But we've got these 4 people in the U.S. who are charged, including the driver of the truck here at Pearson. There's going to be extradition hearings, because they're all charged with firearms offenses in the U.S., so there'll be that extradition section. They have warrants out for 3 other people they're trying to find. Only $90,000 worth of gold has been recovered, and that was melted down and turned into some poorly designed and made bangles. So there's a lot of jewelry, a lot of gold that's still out there that, and that's why this investigation is far from over.
And you also mentioned a missing piece. Talk about that. When it comes to, when we were, chatting about this, you said there's a missing piece here, and that is when it comes down to having the gold melted down.
Well, the missing piece is where does it go?
Yeah.
Right? And part of doing this heist was that they needed to have purchasers readily available. This is not $3 or three pounds worth of gold you stick in a knapsack and you walk out the door with it. It's almost 1,000 pounds in gold, as we see from the video. You can't just go to your local cash for gold guy at some strip mall and say, hey, I got a truck full of gold. How much are you going to give me for this? So they had to have some plans in order.
Mark, everything about the story is fascinating. This is the largest gold heist in Canadian history. Are you surprised that they were able to get away with this for as long as they did?
I think the investigation took a long time because of the inside people. It came out during the press conference, which was fascinating to me, that when Peel Regional Police did their first tour of the warehouse, the person who guided the tour is the guy that's now wanted by Peel for being party to this. I mean, that's a pretty ballsy move on anybody's part. So all of these pieces, there were 37 search warrants. It's not law and order. You don't make a phone call and say, get me a search warrant. There's a lot of work involved. There's a lot of time involved. But I think things really took a heightened role when they arrested this guy in Pennsylvania. And now, of course, we got all these people charged. They're all getting lawyers. They're all going to try and put themselves in the best position before the court. And that's the new stage of this investigation as to where this gold and the rest of the cash has gone. I think it's going to come out of them.
Do you think they're going to find the rest of the gold, by the way?
They might if it hasn't all been melted down. One of the people arrested, by the way, is in the jewelry business. So he has access and knowledge on how to melt this stuff down, to reform it, to put it into those ugly-looking bangles that they showed during the press conference. There's lots of moving parts that are still going to be going on here. And a lot of it will involve reactions from people from this press conference today. That there may be people calling in anonymously and just saying, look, I didn't realize that this guy was part of this. But having said that, 7 months ago, he said to me A, B, and C. So there's all kinds of things that will further this investigation as we move down the road.
When you first heard about this a year ago, what were you thinking?
Well, the first thing I thought was it had to be an inside job. There's no way. It was 40 minutes from the time that they took the gold off the plane, Bakari, till the truck showed up to pick it up. You can't get food delivered in that short a period of time. So you knew that there had to be somebody with knowledge of what was on board that aircraft, when the aircraft was coming in, how it was going to be delivered to the bonded warehouse, and how to get it out of there undetected. It had to be an inside job.
And a Canada-wide warrant issued for 3 suspects still at large. CTV's crime expert, Mark Mendelson, thanks for unpacking this for us. What a fascinating story. We appreciate
My pleasure, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. And coming up next on CP24 Live at noon, the Leafs are going to face a familiar foe in the first round of the playoffs.
Quick hands in tight to get it to the net.
Welcome back. A heads up for drivers, a major hike at the pumps is on the way.
Yeah, the president of Canadians for Affordable Energy, Dan McTeague, says that we're going to see a 14-cent increase in the price of gas overnight into Thursday. The increase is going to put the price at $179.9 per liter. That's the highest price that we've seen since August of 2022. And McTeague was on CP24 Breakfast with the latest on the gas price trends.
We dropped 8 cents a liter back around September the 18th. That's when we went back to winter gasoline. So it dropped from 170.9 to 162.9. You'll see a similar decrease. But this year, something called alkylates are extraordinarily expensive. Demand is very high in the United States. This is the new normal. And unfortunately, when you have other prices, other things being added to the price of fuel, and the hidden one that I mentioned a little earlier, because the Canadian dollar is no longer the petrol loonie, it's costing you and I an extra 32 cents a liter. That's going to show up, and that's going to leave a mark.
The price of gas also recently rose a few cents a liter due to the hike in the federal carbon tax.
We're looking at sports. The Leafs, they now know who they're going to play in the first round of the playoffs.
All eyes still on Austin Matthews last night. The Leafs were visiting the Panthers in Florida, but Matthews would not score and remains at 69 on the season. The Panthers win the game 5-2 and Boston lost, so the Leafs will get the Bruins when the postseason begins. They have one more regular season game tonight against the Lightning. And TSN Radio's Matt Cause joined us with more on the Leafs' first round matchup.
It feels like it was just yesterday. It's been about 5 years since these teams have played. The last 2 years, or the last two playoff series, Toronto's lost Game 7, and all the ghosts, all the cliches are there. But more recently, Boston won all 4 games. Boston was the more physical team in a lot of the games this year. Toronto last year, they finally won a playoff series. They beat the Lightning, who had beaten them the year before. So if you want to look at the more positive approach, Toronto's got another chance.
And the Bruins beat the Leafs in all 4 games this season. They've won 6 straight playoff series against Toronto.
Well, let's talk about basketball. Raptors president Masai Ujiri spoke to reporters this morning and reflected on his team's disappointing season.
We really see the bright side. I think sports is a cycle, and our organization is going to go through different cycles, and this is our time. But we're going to take all the positives from this and build on as much as we can going forward. I think Darko and his staff did an excellent job with the situation. If I think of positives, I think some of the talent, Scotty Barnes, his upside growth as a player, all-star.
The Raptors failed to make the playoffs this year after finishing with a 25-57 record. That was good enough for 12th place in the Eastern Conference. The 2023-24 campaign also saw the Raptors suffer their second worst losing streak in franchise history after they dropped 15 games in a row. Just heartbreaking.
Well, looking at baseball, the Blue Jays, they go for the 3-game series sweep against the Yankees this afternoon.
Up the middle and through, a base hit. Clement in to score.
Last night at Rogers Center, Jordan Romano made his season debut in this one after missing the first few weeks of the season with elbow inflammation. The closer would hit a batter and allow a run, but prevent any further damage to help the Jays secure a 5-4 win over New York. Kevin Gausman starts for the Jays in this afternoon's series finale. Former Blue Jay Marcus Stroman starts for the Yankees. First pitch is at 3:07 this afternoon.
And more than 250,000 tickets for the Paris Games went on sale this morning. Today marks 100 days until the start of the Olympics. Around half of the newly released ticket costs less than 150 Canadian dollars. Nearly 10 million total tickets are being sold for the Games, while 3 million are available for the Paralympics. And the Paris Olympics begin July 26th.
Coming up next on CP24 Live at Noon, we are learning more details about the $20 million gold heist at Pearson Airport that happened a year ago today. We'll tell you more about that next.
We're learning more details of the $20 million gold heist at Pearson Airport that happened a year ago today. The police have arrested 6 suspects, and they're looking for 3 more.
Closing arguments are underway in the trial of Umar Zamir, the man accused of first-degree murder in the 2021 death of Toronto police officer Jeffrey Northrup. Our Beatrice Faisman is working on this.
Are you going to want to fill up your gas tank today? The price at the pumps is set to jump 14 cents overnight.
Good afternoon and welcome to CP24 Live at Noon. I'm Lena Latafat.
And I'm Bakari Savage. Police have made several arrests in the gold bar heist at Pearson Airport. It happened a year ago today. And investigators say that this was an inside job.
CP24's Courtney Heels has the details on this shocking investigation, one that is far from over, Courtney.
That's right, Lena Bakari, and that's because police say about $20 million worth of gold stolen from Pearson Airport. They've only recovered about $90,000 worth. They also say there will be some challenges in trying to track that gold down. So today, an update on this massive investigation. They say this is the largest gold heist in Canadian history, and it was 1 year ago today when somebody showed up at a cargo facility with Air Canada at Pearson with fraudulent paperwork. The paperwork was from a previous transaction, but what we learned from investigators, they say this was an inside job, that Air Canada employees were helping to make this happen, to get access to the goods. The person, after showing the paperwork, was given access to $20 million worth of gold bars. We're talking about 6,600 gold bars and foreign currency, about $2.5 million worth. They loaded it up in a truck and they took off. We're sharing with you now some of the video investigators shared with us earlier. They announced today they've been investigating ever since. 9 suspects connected to this case. As I mentioned, 2 Air Canada employees, also a jewelry store owner. 6 people have been arrested so far, and there are warrants out for 3 others. One of those individuals, though, already in custody, but that's south of the border because that individual, believed to be the driver of the truck, was arrested on something else and found with 65 illegal guns. So we talked to police about why these individuals did this, what they're looking to get access to with the value of the gold. Here's more.
Everybody expects that when you have a criminal organized network, they generally focus or specialize in one area. The reality is that doesn't occur anymore. You know, very similar to private enterprise and legitimate business, they diversify. They look for high reward, low risk. And, you know, you've heard that. That's where this group particularly went wrong. They saw an opportunity. Theft of gold is committed. And then they use the profits from that to finance other endeavors, to continue to grow the network.
So today we heard from the Peel Regional Police Chief, along with a number of other investigators, well over a dozen, who have been looking into this case really from many different angles. They were looking at surveillance video of the truck when it left the cargo area at Pearson Airport, also trying to piece together who they were looking for, if they knew any of these individuals. But now they are shifting to try to recover the rest of the gold. And they say there are challenges in this because the gold, the bars had serial numbers, but once it's melted down, and that's their belief, well, then it's difficult to trace where it is, and if they come across that gold, to trace it back to this heist. So this will be another complicated element of the investigation, but we heard from the people on the team looking into this. They say this is far from over. Over to you guys.
Okay, CP24's Courtney Hills, thank you. And an OPP-led investigation has led to the seizure of 20 illegal guns and 73 kilograms of drugs, mostly cocaine.
35-year-old Bradley Nelson of Whitby is facing a total of 68 charges, including those related to illegal firearms and drug trafficking. During the search warrants, police also seized 3,000 rounds of ammunition and 3 bulletproof vests.
And closing arguments have begun in the Umar Zamir trial. Zamir's pleaded not guilty in the killing of Toronto Police Constable Jeffrey Northrop. The defense began its final arguments to the jury this morning by restating their claim that Zamir never meant to harm Northrop and that it was an unfortunate accident. The defense alleges that the officers who witnessed Northrop get run over by Zamir's vehicle were mostly lying in their testimony. The Crown has previously said that Zamir made a series of maneuvers with his vehicle that led to Northrop's death.
And we are following breaking news now. A player with the Raptors this year, Jontay Porter, has received a lifetime ban from the NBA for violating the league's gambling rules.
Yeah, the league began investigating Porter in March, and they have since found that he bet on NBA games himself, purposely limited his performance in a game, and gave information about his own health to another bettor, who then placed a bet on how Porter would perform in that game. The unusual betting activity on this March 20th game was brought to the attention of the NBA by licensed sports betting operators and a monitoring organization. The investigation in Porter is still open.
Well, heads up for drivers, a major hike at the pumps is on the way.
And for more on what to expect, we're joined live by Patrick DeHaan, head of petroleum analysis at Gas Buddy. So, Patrick, a 14-cent increase, that's not a joke. So break this down for us. What's going on?
Yeah, it's a staggering increase. A lot of it has to do with the final step in the transition to summer gasoline. Now, weeks and weeks ago, we had plenty of winter gasoline. We already had made one step towards summer gasoline. It does not happen all at once, but yesterday, the specification changed to that ultimate blend of summer gasoline, and with it, a bit of sticker shock. As I mentioned, we were getting discounts on those winter blends, which over the course of winter, inventories were very high. But now as we've made the transition towards summer gasoline, inventories are very tight. Keep in mind, refineries also doing maintenance right now, which is constricting supply. That's where you get the jump of 10, 15 cents a liter, something that will be done here in the next few days. And we could see prices plateau after this transition is done, and prices could even start receding by May long.
Okay, that's the sort of short to mid-term picture. I want to ask you how much the carbon tax is contributing to these sky-high prices, if at all yet.
Well, it certainly is. Every year, carbon taxes is set to go up. That's part of the reason why in Toronto we're seeing prices 10 cents a liter higher than where we were last year at this moment, is simply the April 1st carbon tax increase. And that is what skews these year-over-year comparisons. You talk about inflation. Well, you have to talk about carbon tax inflation as well. It's not an active driver of prices. That is a set increase. Really, what's the gist of the increase today is that final step. But again, if you're comparing today's price to the price a year ago, what, $1.50 a liter, some of that is certainly the carbon tax.
Oh, okay, Patrick, when might drivers see some long-term relief?
Well, again, as I mentioned, I think we are getting close to the end in the seasonal rise. This is really the last big speed bump. Now that we're on the summer blend, or after today, that's no longer really going to be an active reason for prices increasing. Now, refineries are still doing maintenance. They usually finish in April or May. Once that maintenance is done, once we start to see utilization and output increase, that should stem the increases and should start to lead to decreases here as refineries get back online and start to crank up output.
So the pain at the pumps, obviously about to get very real for so many drivers all over who are already dealing with really high grocery prices. Do you have any tips for drivers? How do you find the best deal?
Yeah, that's a great question. And even for those filling up today, I certainly would urge them to shop around, because some gas stations have already passed along the higher prices. A lot of 166.9s out there today, but still some stations well below that. Use an app like Gas Buddy or Google or Waze to find those lower prices in your community. And especially with this spec change happening now, maybe a good idea to fill your tank up if you can find stations still at the lower price.
All right, Patrick DeHaan, head of petroleum analysis at Gas Buddy. Thanks, Patrick.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
We want to take you live to City Hall now, where it has been a very busy day with plenty on the agenda for today's council meeting. And
that's what CP24's Phil Perkins is live with the latest. Phil.
Hey, Bakari. Hey there, Lena. Yeah, lots on the docket right now. Maybe not what, maybe just over 168,000 Torontonians want to be talked about right now, and that's the vacant home tax fiasco, to put it lightly. There was a couple other things that were also very important, like a food program for kids in school, but we're going to talk about that with Councillor Paula Fletcher. First, let's talk about the vacant home tax. Sure. It's not going to be talked about today. Obviously, it got a lot of people fired up, ruffled a lot of feathers when it was doled out. People got those letters, including myself. So why was it pushed till tomorrow?
Well, the mayor has a way she's doing it. This mayor is one day she has a key item, and the day two she has another one. So she's chosen tomorrow for vacant home tax. There's nothing behind it, just the way she does her business.
Right. I guess it's just in terms of the way it looks. It's like, this is something that people want information on, that people are stressed out, especially, our Toronto's older population that we spoke with are very stressed out about when they got, a bill for tens of thousands, maybe, of dollars. Don't you think they deserve to know this right away?
Well, if you heard this morning, I think there was 6 different motions. There was an administrative inquiry. I know I had a motion for tomorrow, and then there's a city report. So there's so many different things. How do you bundle them all together so we have a good conversation when it happens? And I think that's why it's going to be tomorrow.
And for the conversation to next year, what's your faith level that this should be better next year?
Well, my faith level is that I don't have a faith level. It has to be better, because when you have that many people that haven't paid, when the deadline has happened, you know something's wrong with how you're telling people what they have to do. So I think the communications plan was a fail, and that I don't think it will be next year. So I think everybody's going to know I got to pay that, and I got to pay it now, and here's how I do it. So I'm very hopeful. I have faith it'll be fixed.
And the parking ticket as well, real quick. I know that is on the docket for this afternoon. What are we looking forward there?
Well, it was earlier. If you're going to the restaurant in the Danforth and you get a ticket today, it's $30. And we had it last month, it would be $75. Well, that's impossible. You're going to drive people away from small business areas where they're parking. Now it's $50.
Okay, we seem to have lost our connection with Phil Perkins and Councillor Paula Fletcher, but we'll have more on that throughout the afternoon. Coming up next on CP24, live at noon.
We're going to be speaking with Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the NDP, about whether his party is going to support the federal budget. That's after the break.
Well, the federal budget has been tabled. There's been plenty of opposition party reacts. And now the focus turns to whether it would be supported by the NDP. For a closer look at that, we're joined live by federal NDP leader Jagmeet Singh. Mr. Singh, welcome back to the show. Thanks for joining us. You've made it very clear you're not pleased with this budget. I know your party's been mulling it over. Are you going to vote for this budget? Will you support it?
Well, it's not a decision we're making yet. I've raised some concerns. I do have to acknowledge, though, we were able to fight for some important things that are in this budget that would have not happened but for the fact we forced the Liberals. So the school lunch program, giving kids a meal at school, making sure people have free birth control, free diabetes medication and devices. That was us. We forced that. And bringing in free protection for renters, making sure renters are protected. So lots of folks are worried about being evicted or rent evicted. We're protecting them with a fund. That was because of us. The Conservatives want to cut all of that. They want to take all that away. But we are concerned about a couple of things, and we want to hear from the Prime Minister before we make our decision. Concerned about the $200 a month disability benefit. That amount is far too low. We're also concerned about 5,000 public sector workers being cut. We're also concerned about Indigenous communities not getting enough support for infrastructure and housing. So there's concerns. I want to hear what the Prime Minister's plan is to address those concerns.
So you have concerns, but you voting against this budget, Mr. Singh, would trigger an election. And that's not something the NDP would want right now, given that the polls are not on your side. So do you really mean it when you say you're considering voting against Justin Trudeau's budget?
Well, we want to make sure I hear from the Prime Minister. I've got some serious concerns, and folks have raised those concerns with me. So I want to raise those concerns directly with the Prime Minister, and then we'll reflect on that. But I do want to acknowledge that we know how important this vote is. It's a very big deal. We also know that there's a lot of big things that we fought for, that Conservatives want to cut and gut, and they want to take away from people. And we know people need some relief, and we have fought to bring in that relief for people. So we're weighing all these things very carefully. And I think it's understandable that the budget just came out yesterday. Mm-hmm. We're going to look it over and make sure it hits the things that we need to see in there, that it is true to the spirit of what we fought and forced the government to do. We want to make sure that we're looking at this very carefully before we make that decision.
I want to talk to you about the GTA perspective. Food prices, as you know, are way up. Gas prices up. House prices out of this world. What would you do differently to tackle the pain that so many families here at home are feeling?
I really appreciate the question. And actually, one of the biggest failures of this budget, we have identified very clearly, whether it's high price of groceries, high price or record high across the world for the price that we pay for our cell phone and internet fees. Like you mentioned, the high cost of housing. All of these things, the culprit or the cause is corporate greed. Corporate greed in grocery stores making record profits while we can't afford our groceries. Corporate greed in the big telcos, the Rogers, Telus, and Bell, that own really the only options for most people when it comes to cell phone and internet fees. So we have identified that as a problem. And that is the pain that people are feeling right now. Neither the Conservatives or the Liberals seem to have the courage to go after this real concern, this real problem that will really cut to the heart of why people are struggling. Corporate greed. Economists agree that is driving up the cost of living. We have to tackle it with better protection for consumers by putting in an excess profit tax like other European countries have done. There's a lot that we can do to take on corporate greed. The Liberals have clearly missed that.
Mr. Singh, there's been some confusion about your position on carbon pricing. The Prime Minister says he doesn't understand. Clear this up for us. Yes or no? Do you support a carbon levy paid for by consumers?
We have not changed our position on the price on pollution. We believe in it. We support it. But we are concerned about the unfairness of the Liberal government's approach. And their approach is not just based on one piece. It's an entire approach. And one of those concerns we've raised, and I raised in a speech recently, was that they give billions of dollars in subsidies, so public money that goes to highly profitable oil and gas companies. Some have put that number as high as $18 billion, according to a report recently. While everyday folks, regular consumers, working class Canadians, are told there's not enough money for you to have help to buy a heat pump or to make changes to your home to reduce your emissions and reduce your costs. That's unfair. And that's what I raised, and I continue to raise, that the Liberals are not approaching this really serious problem in a way that's fair to working class people when they give billions of dollars of subsidies to and don't give supports for working class people.
So I hear you that you support a price on pollution, but is that a yes or a no to supporting a carbon levy paid for by consumers?
Right, we haven't changed our position. We believe very strongly in that price on pollution. We believe we've got to fight the climate crisis. The Conservatives don't believe that. They believe that big polluters can just dump and pollute the environment, pollute the air. We think that's a completely wrong approach. But what I'm trying to isolate is our concern with the Liberal approach is this unfair approach when it comes to working people. And I very much have isolated that to one example right now, which is the big oil and gas subsidies that are billions of dollars, but no help for Canadians who say, well, what if I want to buy a heat pump? What if I want to retrofit my home? There's no help for that. That's what I've raised as a concern. And I think that is a fair concern that Canadians are raising with me.
Okay, Leader of the federal NDP, Jagmeet Singh, we appreciate your time. Thank you for this.
Thanks so much.
And coming up next on CP24 Live at noon, the Leafs are going to face a familiar foe in the first round of the playoffs. We're going to talk to TSN, Mark Masters. The Leafs now know who they play in the first round of the playoffs, the Boston Bruins. We're joined live by TSN's Mark Masters, who is in Tampa. So, Mark, first things first, at 69 goals, will Auston Matthews play tonight?
All signs point to Auston Matthews playing tonight. It's a back-to-back situation for the Leafs. Usually if a guy is going to play in both games, he won't skate in the morning of the second game. We did not see Matthews on the ice this morning. We saw Morgan Rielly, Joel Edmondson, and Jake McCabe. So it looks like those three defensemen will be the guys that are rested tonight, and Matthews will get another chance to go for that historic 70th goal against the Lightning.
Okay, so Bruins, Leafs, let's talk about tonight's matchup, historically speaking.
Yeah, listen, it's two original six rivals. We've seen this series a few times in recent years. 2018, 2019, of course, did not go the Leafs' way. Tight losses, 7-game losses, really just the core guys remaining from those battles. There's some core guys on the Boston side that are also back. So, listen, it's going to be fun. It's going to be a razor-thin margin, and I'm looking forward to this getting started this weekend.
Yeah, Mark, when it comes to these two teams meeting in the past, postseason, during season, regular play, let's talk about that.
Sure, they had a 4-game regular season series this year. The Boston Bruins won all 4 games. I'm not sure how much that matters when it comes to the playoffs. Even Boston admitted that after their last win against the Leafs. They said it's a different game. Teams can dial in more. It's just a completely different animal in the postseason. So we've seen last year the Leafs won the season series against the Florida Panthers. It did not help them in that second round series against Florida. All bets are off when you get to this stage. The Leafs, I think they'll like the way they match up. You got a guy like Matthews who's playing the best hockey of his career. William Nylander having a career year. I think they're going to like their chances going into this series.
Well, Mark, I was just going to ask you about that. How do you see things playing out tonight on the ice?
Well, tonight they're in Tampa, and this will be a tricky one because neither team has much to play for. It's the final game of the regular season. Both teams are locked in. Could be one of those games that has a preseason feel. The only thing that really is on the line tonight is the personal milestones. Matthews going for 70 goals, of course, but Nikita Kucherov is at 99 assists, trying to become the 5th player in NHL history to get to 100 assists in a season. We just saw Connor McDavid do it, but it doesn't happen very often. So those two milestones are really the storylines heading into this regular season finale. And then, of course, both teams just want to get out of it healthy.
And Mark, before we wrap up, how much access have you had to Auston Matthews? Are you able to talk to him, get any questions in, see where his head is?
You know, it's been tough. Listen, he's been getting a lot of requests during this hot streak. He talks pretty much after every game because he scores pretty much in every game. I wanted to talk to him after Monday's practice. He was not made available. Again, last night after the game, he was requested but not made available. You can certainly understand. There's been so much hype, so many questions, a lot of repetitive questions, why the team would want to keep him away from the media at a time like this. Obviously, the most pressure-packed moments of the year are coming up. So we really haven't had a chance to talk to Matthews in the last few days, kind of take his temperature on where things are at and how much the quest for history, the quest for 70 goals is weighing on him. His teammates have all said they really want this for him. How badly does he want it, though? That is unclear. He's certainly playing like he wants it, though. We can see that on the ice.
Okay. Live in Tampa, TSN's Mark Masters. Thank you. And thank you for watching CP24 Live at Noon.